Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we're going to be talking about President Biden's executive order signed today to put a target out there for 2030 for the manufacturing of clean vehicles, as well as the lack of invitation for Tesla or Elon Musk to the event that was held today. We do also then have a bit of an update on the federal US EV tax credit and a couple other pieces of news as well. Another quiet day for Tesla stock today, finishing up 0.5% to $714.63. That did compare to the Nasdaq up 0.8%. But I think the most interesting part of today was the volume. So after that short little burst in volume that we saw at the tail end of last week and early this week, volume has considerably dropped, and today was actually the lowest volume day in over a year and a half. So pretty interesting to see the volume dry up that quickly. Less than 13 million shares traded today. All right, let's move into the announcement from the White House. But before we even get into what was actually announced, let's talk about the guest list for the event, which notably did not include Tesla or Elon Musk, even though the announcement was about driving towards electric vehicles, driving towards cleaner cars. So in the rumors we had heard yesterday, it seemed clear that Tesla would not be involved in this event in any way. Clean Technica last night put out an article asking kind of why that might be. Elon replied to that on Twitter, confirming that Tesla was not invited and saying that he thinks it seemed odd. So then this morning, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg goes on CNBC's Squawk Box. Andrew Ross Sorkin asks him about why Tesla is excluded from this event. Buttigieg said, "I'm not sure." Sorkin then mentioned that tweet from Elon, asked if Buttigieg had seen it, and Buttigieg said that he had not seen it, which is a little bit surprising and maybe a little bit difficult to believe, given that that tweet had happened many hours ago. You would think that someone would have informed him of that. Anyway, Buttigieg gave pretty standard answers there, just saying, we're excited about all the companies trying to push for electric vehicles. So Elon saw that, he replied to CNBC's tweet of that interview, and he posted a meme of the History Channel aliens guy saying, "I'm not saying it's sabotage, but it's sabotage." I think we all know why Tesla wasn't invited, but let's listen to a response here by the White House press secretary to a similar question.
And the founder of Tesla, Elon Musk, expressed surprise that he was not invited to this ceremony because his company is obviously such a large manufacturer of electric vehicles. Can you give us any insight into why Tesla wasn't included in this event?
Well, we of course welcome the efforts of all automakers who recognize the potential of an electric vehicle future and support efforts that will help reach the president's goal. And certainly Tesla is one of those companies. Today, it's the three largest employers of the United Auto Workers and the UAW president who will stand with President Biden as he announces his ambitious new target. But I would not expect this is the last time we talk about clean cars, the move toward electric vehicles, and we look forward to having a range of partners in that effort.
So it's not because Tesla is a non-union shop?
Well, these are the three largest employers of the United Auto Workers, so I'll let you draw your own conclusion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen.
So you may have noticed this on the video, but just for the audio listeners as well, it's pretty clear that she is reading this response off of a paper, so they definitely had prepared for this question. But hey, at least somebody in the government actually said the word Tesla, which might be a first. Anyway, Tesla clearly not there because of the lack of unionization, which, we've talked about many times in the past. I don't think we need to go into that, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on this in the first place. Actually don't even really mind the fact that Tesla isn't at this thing. This is about converting over from gasoline to electric, and there's nothing for Tesla to convert over. There's nothing for Tesla to strive to achieve in that regard because they don't have any gasoline-powered vehicles. I do really wish that Tesla would be acknowledged and looked to as an example for what can be done. Tesla is basically a shining star for every single thing this administration talks about wanting to do, except for the whole union thing. But hey, we've got the world's biggest producer of electric vehicles right here in the US, and they're making a lot of those vehicles in America. The Model 3 and the Model Y, two of the top three most American cars, according to Cars.com. For all of that to not even just be ignored, but to be completely intentionally avoided, it honestly makes me sad. Now, at the end of the day, it's all politics, right? And that's part of why it's saddening, I think. But the message that is trying to be portrayed here is not necessarily the exact same conversation that's happening behind closed doors. And while I do think just the presentation and the message that's communicated can be harmful to the nation or to Tesla, pick whichever, the things that actually make their way into law, those are more important. I think the Buttigieg thing is a great example of that. The guy drives a Tesla, and yet you can see how the political pressure shapes his messages. So anyway, setting aside that Tesla wasn't there, let's talk about what was actually announced today. So President Biden, alongside Ford, GM, and Stellantis, announced a target of 50% of vehicle sales being so-called electric vehicle sales by 2030. At least that is what one of the White House fact sheets says, but one of the other ones with comments from the automakers says that they are aspiring to achieve sales of 40 to 50% electric vehicles. So is it 40%? Is it 50%? Not sure. So that's the high-level news, and we'll come back to that in a second. But additionally, it looks like the EPA and U.S. Department of Transportation also have new proposals on revised emission standards for model year 2023 through model year 2026, which my guess is actually probably going to be more impactful on what actually happens in the auto market than whatever was announced in terms of the 2030 targets. Unfortunately, the EPA press release is pretty vague. They just say it's going to save X amount of emissions, and the actual proposal itself is 282 pages, so I have not gotten through that. As for the 40 or 50% 2030 target, unfortunately, as I alluded to yesterday, this does include plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. To me, that makes this whole thing kind of null and void, completely meaningless. That's why I say the EPA stuff is probably going to actually have much bigger of an impact. Somebody in yesterday's comments asked me why I feel that way about plug-in hybrids. Well, just a couple of reasons here quick. We won't spend a ton of time on it, but first of all, it's just super inefficient to develop and put two powertrains in the same vehicle. It would make sense if pure electric vehicles were not viable, but by now it's super clear that they are. Maybe there are still some niche cases that a plug-in hybrid makes sense, but those niche cases are not what we're talking about here. So in my view, it's a really poor use of developmental resources. It's also a poor value proposition to the customer, in my opinion, because you're paying for two powertrains. That means the one that is actually doing work has to lug the other one around when it's not, which is again, inefficient. And then the last point I'll make here is that plug-in hybrids are just not really that good for the environment, because in many cases, people are just not charging them. So there's been studies that have shown that emissions are actually more in plug-in hybrids than just pure internal combustion engine vehicles because of the added weight of the two powertrains. Manufacturers know this is stupid, and I hope the government knows it's stupid too, but it's just used as a crutch so that legacy automakers can get more longevity out of their investments in internal combustion engines. So including plug-in hybrids in this target means it's not even really a target at all. I mean, automakers could just throw a 4 kilowatt hour battery pack in their car, and if half of the new vehicles sold in the United States each year had that 4 kilowatt hour pack, that's 34 gigawatt hours of batteries. That's less than what Tesla's producing today at Giga Nevada. I'd rather see a 35% fully battery electric vehicle target for 2030 than this nonsense. But thankfully, it looks like competitive pressures, i.e. Tesla, are going to actually force the market that way anyway. By the way, my comments here and when I'm expressing frustration like this, it's not anything to do with Tesla being dealt a bad hand or anything like that. It's actually better for Tesla, I think, the less strict these sort of requirements are. Because the less aggressive the targets are, the less pressure there is on these legacy automakers to actually change, and the slower they change, the bigger the lead Tesla's going to have. So it's actually probably better for Tesla. I'm just expressing my frustration as a person, as a US citizen, as someone that would like to see the transition to sustainable energy. From that perspective, this stuff is frustrating. Rounding out some of my frustration today, and then I promise we'll move on to a different topic, but rounding that out was a statement from the UAW. So the United Auto Workers Union released today in that group of statements by the White House. Part of that read, quote, "While the UAW notes that the companies have made voluntary commitments on electric vehicles, the UAW focus is not on hard deadlines or percentages, but on preserving the wages and benefits that have been the heart and soul of the American middle class," end quote. Now, I don't want to overemphasize just that portion because they did make positive comments about just expanding electric vehicle manufacturing in the US as well. But man, that section really just read to me as malicious compliance of we don't care about these targets at all. This is what prompted my tweet earlier today where I said, trying to protect outdated jobs is to guarantee falling behind company or country. It doesn't really matter. The same thing applies. Change is difficult for sure, but change is the path to prosperity. And if you're not leading that change, somebody else is going to. Obviously, that's worked in Tesla's favor so far, but I guess just broadening out to the total US, one of the concerns I have is just that sort of mentality kind of working against the US more broadly. I think I'll wrap up on that because I do respect that this is a challenging topic, and even for me, I've re-recorded a bunch of these sections now because it's difficult for me to get, I guess, just an accurate representation of my thoughts across. And I don't really want to come off as anti-worker. I think workers' rights are super important too. But again, that just ends up being a pretty big rabbit hole and probably best for a different discussion. Anyway, a lot of the announcement today, not really all that relevant to Tesla aside from the competitive set, but one thing that was relevant was Biden's comments on a potential EV tax credit. So here I'll play that clip.
Thirdly, support of consumers and fleets. That means purchasing incentives for consumers to buy clean vehicles, union-made right here in America, like the ones championed by Debbie Stabenow and Ron Wyden in the Senate, which provides $7,500 basic credit, $2,500 credit for vehicles made in America, and an additional $2,500 credit for union-made vehicles.
So from those comments and from just the comments in the White House statements released today, it does appear that EV tax credit's still on the table. And as Biden mentioned there, it sounds like the most recent thinking on a framework is still what we had last discussed, with that base $7,500 credit and then $2,500 for US-made EVs and $2,500 for union-made EVs. So max tax credit there of $12,500, with Tesla capping out at $10,000. Which, yeah, maybe not ideal and does penalize workers that don't work for unionized companies, which if the narrative is to be believed, then it sounds like the workers that are not unionized are actually the ones that need more support. But obviously, that is a digression and back to what we were talking about before. But anyway, in Tesla's case, I don't think that $2,500 potential disadvantage would be enough to make much of a significant impact in where Tesla's business is heading. So that's the latest update we've got on the tax credit. Definitely sounds like it is still on the table, still something that is being pushed for. Anything more I hear, I will pass along. All right, last couple of things here. First, a report out of China that I did see shared on D. Kirk's Twitter page. Usually he provides some pretty good information, but this is from CLS. They're reporting that according to industry sources, Tesla right now is testing out BYD batteries for a potential supply contract starting in the second quarter of next year. Apparently, they're testing BYD's so-called Plaid batteries, which has to do with the form factor, but the chemistry is lithium iron phosphate, the same chemistry Tesla uses in their standard range vehicles. So we'll see if it happens. I think more battery supply, the better. We have seen false rumors on BYD and Tesla in the past. A few months back, you may remember there was a report that Tesla had acquired BYD, so I wouldn't put a whole lot of weight in this at this point. Last thing here, just in case you did miss it on Twitter yesterday, Elon Musk did announce that Walter Isaacson is working on a biography about Elon. So this is the same author that's written biographies on Steve Jobs, Leonardo da Vinci, Einstein, etc. So I think really exciting to see that. Something to look forward to reading someday. So that is where we'll wrap it up for today. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. You can also find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast. And I'll see you tomorrow for the Friday, August 6th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.